Jake Morrison woke up on the cold metal floor for the 200th time. He knew it was the 200th time because he had been counting. 6 months, 28 days, and 14 hours since the Krell had taken them. He kept track of everything now. It was the only thing that made him feel human. The white walls around him were spotless. Everything in this place was clean and white and wrong. Jake sat up slowly and looked around the room. Kate Williams was already awake, sitting against the far wall with her knees pulled up to her chest. She was staring at the transparent barrier that separated them from the observation area. "They're watching again," Kate said without looking at him. Jake nodded. The Krell were always watching. The insect-like aliens stood on the other side of the clear wall, their multiple eyes fixed on the humans. They never seemed to sleep. Their bodies were covered in dark green shells and they moved with quick, jerking motions that made Jake's skin crawl. Ryan Cooper stumbled out of the sleeping area, rubbing his eyes. The pilot looked thinner than he had 6 months ago. They all did. The food the Krell gave them was nutritious but tasteless. It kept them alive, but nothing more. "Morning," Ryan said, though there was no real morning here. The lights never changed. Time was just something they invented to stay sane. Lisa Grant emerged next, her medical training evident in the way she immediately checked each of them with her eyes, looking for signs of illness or injury. She had been doing this every day since their capture. Old habits were hard to break. Ben Harris was the last to join them. The young communications specialist had dark circles under his eyes. He spent most of his time trying to understand the Krell language, listening to their clicking and buzzing sounds through the walls. "Any progress?" Jake asked him. Ben shook his head. "They use a translator device when they talk to us, but when they talk to each other, it's all clicks and patterns. I can't make sense of it." The 5 humans gathered in the center of their shared space. This had become their routine. Every morning they met and talked. It reminded them that they were still people, not just specimens in a cage. "It's been 6 months, Lisa said quietly. 6 months and they haven't told us anything. No demands, no explanations, just tests and observations." Kate stood up and walked to the transparent wall. She pressed her hand against it, and on the other side a Krell moved closer. Its head tilted in that strange way they did when something interested them. "They're studying us," Kate said. "The tests, the scans, the way they watch us interact. They're not soldiers or politicians. They're scientists. Scientists who kidnapped us," Ryan added bitterly. "Yes," Kate agreed, "but scientists have goals. They want to learn something specific. We just need to figure out what." Jake had been thinking the same thing. He had started noticing patterns in the Krell's behavior. They seemed most interested when the humans touched each other, when they showed emotion, when they talked about personal things. The aliens recorded everything, their strange devices humming and blinking. The door suddenly hissed open. This was unusual. The Krell rarely entered their space. 3 of them walked in, moving in that unsettling, synchronized way they had. The middle one carried the translation device, a small box that turned their clicks into words the humans could understand. "Greetings, specimens," the device said in a flat, mechanical voice. "I am Observer Prime. Your observation period has concluded. We will now explain your situation." The 5 humans moved closer together instinctively. Jake positioned himself slightly in front of Kate. Old military training never really left. "You were selected for this study because you represent optimal genetic diversity among your species," Observer Prime continued. "We have observed your social bonding patterns, your emotional responses, and your physical capabilities. The data has been most valuable." "Why?" Kate asked, her voice steady despite the fear Jake could see in her eyes. "What do you want from us?" "Understanding," the Krell replied. "Your species practices pair bonding for reproduction. This is unusual. Most species use different methods. We wish to observe this process directly." A cold feeling spread through Jake's chest. He could see the others had the same realization. Lisa's hand flew to her mouth. Ben took a step backward. Ryan's fist clenched. "You want us to breed," Kate said flatly, "like animals in a zoo." "The comparison is imprecise but functional," Observer Prime said. The Krell's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "We propose an exchange. 2 of you will agree to mate and produce offspring. We will observe and document. In return, all 5 specimens will be returned to human space with compensation." "You're insane," Ryan said, his voice rising. "You can't just kidnap people and force them to—" Force is unnecessary, the Krell interrupted. This is a voluntary exchange. You provide data, we provide freedom. Both parties benefit. Jake's mind was racing. 6 months in this cage had worn them all down. The thought of freedom, of seeing Earth again, was almost painful. But the cost, and if we refuse? Lisa asked. Then observation continues indefinitely, Observer Prime said simply. You will be kept comfortable and healthy, but you will remain here. How long? Ben's voice was barely a whisper. Until natural death. Your lifespans will provide valuable long-term data. The Krell turned and left without waiting for a response. The door sealed behind them with a hiss that sounded too final. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Jake looked at Kate, who was staring at the floor. Ryan had his back to them, his shoulders shaking. Lisa was crying silently. Ben just stood there looking lost. They can't be serious, Ryan finally said. It's barbaric. They don't see it that way, Kate said softly. To them, we're just interesting animals. They probably think they're being generous. Jake sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Freedom. After 6 months of hell, they were offering freedom. But the price was someone's entire life. Someone's child born in captivity used as a science experiment. We need to think about this, Lisa said, wiping her eyes. We need to discuss our options. What options? Ryan shouted. Spend the rest of our lives in this cage or let them turn us into their breeding program? Those aren't options. Kate walked to the wall again, staring out at the empty observation area. Jake watched her, saw the way her shoulders were set, the determined angle of her jaw. He had gotten to know that look over the past 6 months. It meant she was thinking, calculating, planning. Kate, he said quietly. She turned to look at him and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or just the shared exhaustion of two people who had been prisoners for too long. We should rest, she said. Think about it. Talk tomorrow. But Jake knew that none of them would sleep tonight. The Krell had given them an impossible choice, and now they had to live with it. He lay down on his sleeping mat and stared at the unchanging white ceiling. Somewhere far away, Earth kept spinning. People lived their lives free and unaware that 5 of their own were trapped in an alien cage, being asked to sacrifice everything for a chance to go home. Jake closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. It never did anymore. 3 days passed before anyone spoke about it directly. They talked around it, discussing the Krell's behavior, analyzing their words, debating whether the aliens could be trusted. But nobody wanted to say the actual words out loud. Kate finally broke the silence on the 4th morning. I'll do it, she said. Everyone stopped and stared at her. She was sitting in her usual spot against the wall, looking calmer than she had any right to be. Kate, you can't be serious, Lisa said. I'm completely serious. Kate stood up and faced them all. Think about it logically. We're not getting out of here any other way. We've tried everything. The doors are sealed, the walls are impossible to break, and we have no way to contact anyone. This is our only option. It's not an option, Ryan said firmly. It's surrender. If we do this, we're telling them it's okay to treat humans like lab rats. They already treat us like lab rats, Kate shot back. We've been their lab rats for 7 months. At least this way we get to leave. Jake had been quiet, watching Kate carefully. She was trying to sound logical, detached, like this was just another problem to solve. But he could see the tremor in her hands, the way she wouldn't quite meet anyone's eyes. You've been thinking about this for days, he said. It wasn't a question. Kate nodded. I've been studying them. The Krell have a rigid honor system when it comes to agreements. It's part of their hive structure. If Observer Prime says they'll release us, they will. Breaking an agreement would damage the entire hive's status. You're basing our freedom on alien psychology we barely understand, Ben pointed out. I'm basing it on 7 months of observation, Kate corrected. I've watched them. They follow patterns. They keep promises. It's how their society works. Lisa shook her head. Even if that's true, Kate, you're talking about having a child here, in this place, being pregnant while they study you like an experiment, and then that child gets to grow up on Earth, Kate interrupted. Free, under real sky. That's more than we have now. The room fell silent again. Jake could see everyone struggling with it, the terrible logic of Kate's argument against the horror of what it would mean. There's another problem, Ryan said quietly. You said I'll do it, but it takes two people, Kate. Kate's eyes flicked to Jake for just a second, then away. I know. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had known this was coming, had felt it in the way Kate looked at him sometimes over the past few days. They had grown close during their imprisonment, shared fears, shared hopes, long conversations in the dead of night when neither could sleep. It made sense, in a terrible way. But this wasn't how it was supposed to work. This wasn't a choice made freely. No, Jake said. Kate's head snapped up. Jake, no, he repeated, standing. I won't let you volunteer for this alone. If we're going to talk about it, we all talk about it. Together. There's nothing to talk about, Ryan said, his voice rising. We're not doing this. We find another way. What other way? Kate demanded. Tell me, Ryan, what's your plan? We've been here 7 months and we haven't found a single weakness, a single opportunity. This is it. This is the only way out. Then we stay, Ryan said stubbornly. We refuse and we stay, and eventually someone will come looking for us. Will they? Ben asked quietly. Our ship was attacked in deep space. No distress call. Nobody knows where we are. We could wait 50 years and nobody would find us. Lisa wrapped her arms around herself. There has to be another option, there has to be. But as the day wore on, nobody could think of one. They argued in circles, hope and despair taking turns. Jake watched Kate retreat into herself, her brief moment of determination fading into exhaustion. That night, when the others were asleep, Jake found Kate sitting alone in the observation area. She was staring out at the stars visible through the far window, Earth somewhere impossibly distant among them. You meant it, Jake said, sitting down beside her. About volunteering. Yes, Kate said simply. Why? She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Because I'm already broken, Jake. 7 months in this cage, being studied and prodded and watched every second. I'm already not the person I was, but the others. Ryan still has hope. Lisa still believes in finding another way. Ben still thinks he can solve this like a puzzle. I can't let them lose that. And me? Kate finally looked at him. You're different. You understand that sometimes there are no good choices. Only less terrible ones. Jake wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that there was always another way. But he had been a Marine. He had been in situations where every choice led to death, and you just had to pick who lived. He did understand. If we do this, he said slowly, it won't be because they forced us. It'll be our choice, our plan. We use their offer against them. What do you mean? We make demands. We negotiate. If they want their data so badly, they pay for it. Better conditions, access to information, communication with the outside. We turn this into leverage. Kate's eyes widened slightly. You're thinking like a prisoner of war. That's what we are, Jake said. And prisoners look for any advantage, even small ones. Over the next week, Kate and Jake worked out their plan. They presented it to the others carefully, watching Ryan's resistance slowly crumble under the weight of logic and exhaustion. Lisa cried, but eventually nodded. Ben looked sick but admitted he couldn't think of anything better. When Observer Prime returned, Kate spoke for all of them. We'll accept your offer, she said. But we have conditions. The Krell's head tilted. Specimens do not dictate terms. You want willing cooperation? Kate replied coolly. That requires negotiation, unless you'd prefer to wait another few years and hope one of us changes our mind. There was a long pause. Then Observer Prime's translator clicked on. State your conditions. Jake stepped forward. Better living quarters, real food, not nutritional paste, access to educational materials and entertainment, regular communication with you about the timeline for our release, and medical care that treats Kate like a patient, not a specimen. Acceptable, Observer Prime said after a moment. These accommodations will be provided. Do you agree to the exchange? Kate took a deep breath. Jake saw her hands shaking and reached out, taking one in his. She squeezed back hard. We agree, Kate said. The change was immediate. Within hours, the Krell had transformed their prison. The stark white walls were replaced with softer colors. Real beds appeared with actual mattresses and blankets. The food improved dramatically. They received screens that showed Earth broadcasts, books, movies, music. It was almost cruel how much better it made everything feel. The others were moved to connected but separate rooms. They could still see each other through transparent walls, could still talk, but couldn't touch. The Krell were isolating Jake and Kate, giving them privacy for their task. On the first night in their new quarters, Jake and Kate sat on opposite sides of the room, not looking at each other. "We don't have to do anything," Jake said. "Not yet. We bought ourselves better conditions, that's something." "They'll expect progress eventually," Kate replied. "Eventually isn't now." Kate smiled weakly. "No, it's not." They talked instead. About Earth, about their lives before the Krell. Kate told him about her research, her dreams of discovering new species on distant worlds. Jake talked about his family, his sister's kids he might never see again. Slowly, over days and then weeks, they grew closer. Not because the Krell demanded it, but because they were two people alone in hell finding comfort in each other. When they finally did come together, it was their choice. Their small rebellion against everything the Krell had taken from them. 3 weeks later, Kate took the pregnancy test the Krell had provided. Jake stood beside her, holding her hand, as the result appeared. Positive. Through the transparent wall, they could see the others. Ryan looked devastated. Lisa was crying. Ben just stared. But Kate and Jake held each other, and for the first time in months, they felt something other than despair. They felt like they were going home. The first 3 months of Kate's pregnancy were almost peaceful. Almost. If you could forget that every moment was being recorded, every heartbeat monitored, every conversation analyzed by alien scientists who saw you as nothing more than data. The Krell kept their word about the better conditions. The food was good, the beds were comfortable, and the entertainment screens gave them a window to Earth, even if it was one they couldn't reach through. Kate received excellent medical care. The Krell doctors were efficient and gentle, their instruments more advanced than anything human medicine had developed. Jake watched Kate's belly grow with mixed feelings. Part of him was terrified, part of him was angry, but a small part, one he tried not to think about too much, felt something like hope. They had created life in this terrible place. That meant something. The others adapted as best they could. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see them in their separate quarters. Lisa spent her time reading medical journals on the screens. Ben had taken apart and rebuilt every piece of technology the Krell had given them, trying to understand how it worked. Ryan exercised constantly, his body lean and hard from months of training. They talked every day through the communication system the Krell had installed. It wasn't the same as being together, but it helped. "How are you feeling?" Lisa asked Kate during one of their daily check-ins. "Tired," Kate admitted. She was sitting on the bed, one hand resting on her stomach. "But okay. The baby's healthy. The Krell say everything is progressing normally." "That's good," Lisa said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. They didn't talk about what would happen after the baby was born. The Krell had promised to release them, but they hadn't given a specific timeline. Jake had asked Observer Prime about it several times, but the alien always gave the same response: upon completion of the study, whatever that meant. Kate entered her second trimester, and the Krell's interest seemed to intensify. They were constantly taking scans, asking questions, observing how Jake and Kate interacted with each other. They seemed fascinated by the way humans touched, the way they comforted each other, the gentle way Jake would rest his hand on Kate's stomach to feel the baby kick. "They don't understand it," Kate said one night. "Emotional bonding. It's completely foreign to them." "Good," Jake replied. "Let them stay confused." He had started noticing things about their captors. Small things. The Krell followed patterns, strict routines. They changed shifts at exact times. They always approached from the same directions. They had protocols for everything. Protocols had weaknesses. Jake started keeping notes in his head, careful not to write anything down or say anything the Krell might overhear. He mapped the facility in his mind, noting every door, every corridor visible through windows, every guard rotation. He didn't know why he was doing it. They had an agreement. They would be released. But old instincts whispered that you should always have a backup plan. Kate was 5 months pregnant when Observer Prime came to visit. The Krell had been coming more frequently, checking on Kate's progress, but this felt different. There was something in the way Observer Prime moved, a tension in the air. "Greetings," the translator device said. "I bring news regarding your release." Jake's heart jumped. Kate grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. "The Council has reviewed our agreement," Observer Prime continued. "Your cooperation has been exemplary. The data collected has exceeded all expectations. You have fulfilled your part of the exchange. So we can go home?" Kate asked, her voice shaking. "The situation has evolved," Observer Prime said. "The Council has determined that your value as research subjects extends beyond the initial parameters. The pregnancy, the bonding behaviors, the emotional responses all provide data of immense significance to our understanding of your species." A cold feeling began spreading through Jake's chest. "What are you saying?" he asked quietly. "The Council has decided that continued observation is necessary. You will be kept comfortable. Your needs will be met. Your offspring will receive the best possible care. But release is no longer feasible." Kate made a sound like she'd been punched. No, you promised. You gave your word." "The agreement was made under incomplete information," Observer Prime said. "The Council's decision supersedes individual agreements. This is standard protocol." "You lied," Jake said, his voice hard and flat. "You made a deal and you're breaking it. We are adjusting parameters based on new data. This is logical. It's betrayal." Lisa's voice came through the communication system. She must have been listening. "You betrayed us." "Betrayal implies emotional investment. We have none. This is simply a revision of experimental protocol." Observer Prime turned to leave. Jake lunged forward, but the transparent barrier was between them. He slammed his fist against it, the impact sending pain shooting up his arm. "You can't do this," Ryan was shouting from his quarters. "You can't just keep us here forever." "Specimen comfort is paramount," Observer Prime said. "You will have everything you need. This facility is equipped for long-term habitation. Your lifespans will provide valuable longitudinal data." The Krell left, and then, all around them, the facility began to change. Heavy blast doors descended from the ceiling, sealing over the entrance to their quarters. The transparent walls between the different rooms turned opaque, cutting them off from each other completely. The communication system went dead with a soft click. Kate collapsed onto the bed, her hands pressed to her face. Jake could hear her sobbing, could hear his own breathing harsh and ragged in his ears. He went to the door and pounded on it, knowing it was useless. The metal was thick, unyielding. The observation windows darkened, giving them privacy for the first time in months. But privacy felt like being buried alive. "Jake," Kate's voice was small and broken. "What have we done?" He sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. She was shaking, tears soaking through his shirt. Inside her, the baby kicked, innocent and unaware of the prison it would be born into. "I'm sorry," Jake whispered. "I'm so sorry." They had trusted the Krell. They had believed in the agreement. They had thought that doing what was asked would lead to freedom. Instead, they had given the aliens exactly what they wanted, and received nothing in return. The comfortable quarters that had seemed like an improvement now felt like a better cage. Still a cage, always a cage. That night, Kate cried herself to sleep. Jake held her, staring at the darkened ceiling, feeling something cold and hard settling into his chest where hope used to be. The Krell thought they could keep them like this. Comfortable prisoners providing data until they died of old age. They thought humans would accept it, would adapt, would eventually resign themselves to captivity. They were wrong. Jake didn't know how yet. He didn't know when. But he made himself a promise in the darkness of that sealed room. They would get out. All of them. They would see Earth again, and the Krell would learn that humans didn't forgive betrayal. The comfortable amenities remained. Food still appeared on schedule. The screen still worked, still showed them Earth. But now it felt like torture seeing what they could never have. Days blurred together. Kate's pregnancy continued, her body changing while her spirit broke. Jake tried to stay strong for her, but at night, alone with his thoughts, he felt the weight of what they had lost crushing down on him. They had been prisoners before, Now they were prisoners forever, and there was nothing they could do about it. Or so the Krell thought, but they didn't understand humans. They didn't understand that hope, even when broken, could be rebuilt. They didn't understand that patience could be a weapon. They didn't understand that every cage has a weakness, and they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had given the humans time. Kate gave birth on a Tuesday, or at least Jake thought it was Tuesday. Time had become strange again after the Krell sealed the doors. Without the others to talk to, without any variation in their days, the calendar he kept in his head started to slip, but the baby was real. Sophie. They named her Sophie because Kate said it meant wisdom, and their daughter would need to be wise to survive in this place. The Krell watched everything. Cameras in every corner, sensors monitoring every breath. They saw Sophie's first cry, her first feeding, the way Kate held her close and wept. They documented it all with the cold efficiency of scientists studying an interesting phenomenon, but they missed something important. They missed the way Jake's eyes had changed, the way he moved differently now, with purpose instead of despair. They missed the moment when grief turned into determination. The Krell had made a mistake. They had given Jake something to fight for. The first few months after Sophie's birth were hard. Kate was exhausted, her body recovering while her mind struggled with the reality of raising a child in captivity. Sophie was healthy, beautiful, perfect, and she would never see the sun. That thought drove Jake to the edge of madness some days, but he couldn't break. Kate needed him. Sophie needed him. So he adapted. He studied the Krell's patterns more carefully now. They came for medical checks at the same times every day. They brought food at exact intervals. They conducted observations on a strict schedule. The Krell loved their routines. Routines could be exploited. Jake also noticed something else. The Krell were uncomfortable around Sophie. When the baby cried, they would hurry through their examinations. When Kate nursed her, they would avert their multiple eyes as if embarrassed. Human infant care seemed to disturb them on some fundamental level. It was a weakness, small, but real. 6 months after Sophie's birth, the opaque walls between quarters suddenly became transparent again. Jake saw the others for the first time in nearly a year, and his heart clenched. They all looked older, harder. Lisa had lost weight. Ryan's hair had grown long. Ben had a beard now, but they were alive. A speaker crackled to life. Communication privileges restored, Observer Prime's translated voice announced. Social isolation was producing undesirable psychological effects in all specimens. Observation value diminished. Visual and audio contact will continue. Jake wanted to laugh at the clinical language describing their suffering. Instead, he pressed his hand against the transparent barrier, and on the other side, Ryan did the same. You okay? Ryan asked, his voice rough from disuse. We're alive, Jake replied. It was the only honest answer. Kate brought Sophie to the wall. Lisa's eyes filled with tears when she saw the baby. She's beautiful, Lisa whispered. She's trapped, Kate said quietly, just like us. But being able to see the others changed things. They could talk again, plan again, think again. The Krell had meant it as an improvement to their conditions, but they had given the humans back something crucial. Unity. They started carefully. Nothing obvious, nothing that would alert their captors. But they talked in code, in half-finished sentences and shared glances that meant more than words. Ben was the first to report progress. He had been working on the entertainment screens in his quarters, taking them apart and rebuilding them over and over. The Krell had let him, probably thinking it was just a harmless hobby to keep him occupied. I've been learning their systems, Ben said during one of their conversations. He spoke casually, as if discussing the weather. The screens connect to the station network. Very basic access, but it's there. I've been mapping it. Jake's pulse quickened, but he kept his face neutral. The Krell were always watching. Interesting hobby, he said. Very interesting, Ben agreed. Lots to explore, slowly, very slowly. Lisa had been making progress too. As a medical officer, she had access to basic supplies for Kate's care and Sophie's needs. Over months, she had been sorting through them, learning what they did, how they worked. Some of these medicines are fascinating, she mentioned one day. The Krell biology is so different from ours. I've been reading about it on the educational databases. Their respiratory systems are particularly sensitive to certain compounds. That's nice, Kate said, understanding immediately. Educational. Ryan had kept himself in peak physical condition. He exercised for hours every day, his movements precise and controlled. The Krell had noted it in their observations, but they seemed to think it was just a coping mechanism. They didn't realize he was training for war. "Staying sharp," Ryan said during one conversation. His eyes met Jake's through the barrier. "Never know when you might need to move fast." Jake nodded slowly. "Good to be prepared." But the most important work was being done by Kate. She had requested educational materials for Sophie, saying she wanted her daughter to learn about Earth even if she couldn't go there. The Krell had agreed, probably finding it an interesting data point about human parental behavior. They brought her children's books, learning programs, interactive databases, and hidden among the colorful pictures and simple words were technical manuals, engineering diagrams, star charts, navigation data. Kate studied them all. Her scientist's mind absorbed everything, categorizing, analyzing, planning. Sophie would play with her toys, and Kate would memorize the layout of the station, the locations of the hangar bays, the paths to the docking areas. The Krell watched her read to her daughter and saw maternal bonding. They didn't see the strategic planning happening behind Kate's eyes. A year passed, then another. Sophie grew from a baby into a toddler, taking her first steps in a prison that the Krell had designed to hold her parents. She learned to talk, her first words a mix of hope and heartbreak. Mama, Dada, home, home, a place she had never seen. A concept she learned from screens and stories. The Krell found it fascinating. They increased their observations of how human children learned abstract concepts. They still didn't see the danger, because every day the 5 humans were working, slowly, patiently, building towards something the Krell couldn't imagine. They had time now, decades potentially. The Krell had given them life sentences, which meant they didn't have to rush. Patience was a weapon. Time was a resource, and the humans were learning to use both. Ben worked on the computer systems, finding backdoors and weaknesses bit by bit. Lisa studied Krell biology and chemistry, learning what made their captors vulnerable. Ryan trained his body and mind, preparing for violence if it became necessary. Kate gathered information, building a complete picture of the station and everything in it. And Jake coordinated. He watched for patterns, timed their activities, made sure nothing they did raised suspicion. He had been a marine engineer, trained in both combat and complex systems. Now he used everything he had learned to plan the impossible. Sophie's second birthday came and went. The Krell gave them a small cake, interested in observing human celebration rituals. Sophie laughed and clapped her hands, and the aliens recorded every moment. They didn't record the look that passed between the 5 adults. The silent understanding that their plans were nearly complete. That soon, very soon, they would make their move. The Krell thought they had won. They had their perfect specimens, comfortable and cooperative, providing data that would last for decades. But they had forgotten something important about humans, about any species that valued freedom above survival. A cornered animal is dangerous, but a patient one is deadly, and the humans had been patient for a very long time. Jake held Sophie that night, feeling her small weight in his arms, her breath soft against his chest. Kate stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Soon," she whispered, too quiet for the microphones to catch. "Soon," Jake agreed. The Krell had sealed them in, but every door had a key. Every cage had a weakness, they just had to find it. And they had. Sophie turned 2 years and 3 months old on the day they finally made their move. She was playing with blocks in the corner of the quarters, building towers and knocking them down with delighted giggles. The Krell were watching, as always, fascinated by human child development. They didn't notice that Sophie's play was a signal. 3 towers meant 3 hours until the scheduled medical examination. The examination that would change everything. Ben had spent 2 years carefully and visibly building backdoor access to the station's systems. He had done it so slowly that the Krell's security programs never flagged it as suspicious. Just a bored human tinkering with electronics to pass the time. Now he had control over critical systems, waiting for the right moment to use it. Lisa had synthesized a compound from the medical supplies over months of careful work. It wasn't lethal, but it would incapacitate the Krell's respiratory systems for several hours. She had hidden it inside what looked like a simple cleaning solution, something so mundane the Krell never thought to analyze it. Ryan was ready. His body was a weapon now, honed by years of constant training. He knew exactly how fast he could move, how much force he could generate, where the Krell were vulnerable despite their exoskeletons. Kate had memorized every detail of the station. She could navigate from their quarters to the hangar bay blindfolded. She knew the guard rotations, the security checkpoints, the emergency protocols. More importantly, she had found something crucial in the educational databases: the location of other holding cells. They weren't the only prisoners here. Jake had coordinated everything, timing it perfectly. The Krell medical examination happened every week at the same time. 4 guards would enter their quarters. Observer Prime would supervise. It was the only time the blast doors opened. It was their only chance. The alert sounded for the medical check. Jake picked up Sophie, holding her close. Kate stood beside him, her face calm despite the fear Jake could see in her eyes. This had to work. If it didn't, the Krell would never trust them again. They would never get another opportunity. The blast door opened. 4 Krell guards entered, followed by Observer Prime. They moved in their usual synchronized pattern, efficient and precise. Lisa's voice came through the communication system. "Now, Ben." The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red. The Krell stopped, confused. Their communications devices started clicking frantically as they tried to understand what was happening. Lisa activated the ventilation system in her quarters. The compound she had created flooded into the air circulation, spreading through the facility. It was colorless, odorless, designed specifically to target Krell biology. The guards began to stumble. Their clicking became distressed, panicked. Observer Prime turned toward the door, but Ryan was faster. The transparent barrier between quarters had vanished when Ben crashed the security systems. Ryan burst through, moving with the speed and precision of someone who had practiced this moment 1,000 times in his mind. He hit the nearest guard hard, targeting the joints in its exoskeleton where the armor was weakest. The Krell went down. Jake handed Sophie to Kate and joined the fight. He wasn't as fast as Ryan, but he was smart about it. He used the furniture, the equipment, anything he could grab. The Krell were bigger, but they were also slow and disoriented from Lisa's compound. Observer Prime tried to sound an alarm. Ben shut it down remotely, his fingers flying over the makeshift controls he had built from the entertainment screen components. "Exit is clear," Ben called out. "I've opened the blast doors, but we have maybe 10 minutes before the station's main computer overrides my access." Lisa and Ben emerged from their quarters, Lisa carrying a bag of supplies she had prepared. Ben had a small device in his hands, wires trailing from it to the wall panel. "Go," Jake said. "Get to the hangar. We're right behind you." Kate led the way. Sophie held tight in her arms. She moved with absolute certainty, following the path she had memorized. The corridors were chaos. Red emergency lights flashing. Alarms blaring. Other Krell stumbling and falling as Lisa's compound spread through the ventilation. They passed other holding cells. Behind transparent barriers, Jake saw them. Dozens of aliens from species he didn't recognize. All prisoners. All trapped like the humans had been. "Ben!" Kate shouted over the alarms. "Can you open these cells?" "Are you sure?" Ben asked. "It'll cause more chaos. Harder for us to escape." "Do it," Kate said firmly. "All of them." Ben's device clicked. All along the corridor, blast doors opened. Containment fields dropped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the prisoners began to emerge. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. All of them looked at the fleeing humans and understood. Freedom was happening. They ran. The station became a maze of escaping prisoners and incapacitated guards. Some of the freed aliens helped the humans, clearing paths and blocking pursuers. Others simply ran for their own ships. The Krell had kept every captured vessel, displayed like trophies. Now they were escape vehicles. Kate led them through the chaos, her memory perfect. Left at the next junction, down the access corridor, through the cargo bay. The hangar was just ahead. They burst through the doors and Jake's heart soared. There it was. Their original ship, the research vessel they had been captured in nearly 3 years ago. It looked intact, just dusty and abandoned. "Ryan, can you fly it?" Jake asked. "I can fly anything," Ryan said with the first real smile Jake had seen from him in years. They ran for the ship. Behind them, the sound of pursuit was growing. Some Krell had recovered faster than others, or had been in sections of the station the compound hadn't reached yet. Ben got the ship's airlock open. They piled inside and Jake sealed it behind them. Ryan sprinted for the cockpit. The others strapped Sophie and themselves into seats as the ship's systems came to life. Come on, Ryan muttered, his hands dancing over the controls. The ship had been in storage for years, but the Krell had maintained it. Maybe they had planned to study it eventually. The engines roared to life. Hangar doors are sealed, Ben said, checking the station systems on his device. I can open them, but it'll take a minute. We don't have a minute, Lisa said, looking at the monitors. Krell guards were pouring into the hangar. Then we make our own door, Ryan said. He armed the ship's weapons, targeting lasers that had been meant for asteroid mining. Everyone hold on, the lasers fired. The hangar doors exploded outward into space. Atmosphere rushed out, carrying debris and several unfortunate Krell with it. Emergency bulkheads slammed down throughout the station, containing the breach. Their ship shot through the gap, tumbling into open space. Ryan wrestled with the controls, stabilizing their flight. Behind them, the Krell station was chaos. Ships were launching from multiple hangar bays as other prisoners made their escapes. Some were firing on the station itself. We need to jump to FTL, Kate said, before they organize pursuit. Working on it, Ryan replied. The jump drive needs a minute to charge. That minute felt like an eternity. Jake watched the monitors, seeing Krell security ships beginning to launch. But they were confused, overwhelmed by the dozens of escaping vessels going in every direction. 30 seconds, Ryan said. Ben was working on something on his device. I'm uploading a data packet to every communications network I can reach. Coordinates of this station, everything we know about the Krell's prisoner operations. If we're leaving, I want everyone to know what happened here. Good, Kate said, holding Sophie close. The little girl was scared but quiet, her eyes wide. 10 seconds. The Krell ships were getting closer. Weapons charging. 5 seconds. Come on, Jake whispered. The FTL drive engaged. Space twisted around them, and the Krell station vanished in a blur of light. They were gone, racing across the galaxy at speeds that made distance meaningless. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They just sat there breathing hard, hardly believing it had worked. Then Sophie started to cry, and Kate started to laugh, and suddenly they were all laughing and crying at the same time. They were free. Actually, impossibly free. Where are we going? Lisa asked when she could speak again. Ryan checked the navigation. I set course for the nearest human colony, the Outer Rim station at New Haven. It's about 6 months away at this speed, 6 months. After nearly 3 years of captivity, 6 months seemed like nothing. Jake moved to the cockpit and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Somewhere out there, freedom was real. We did it, Kate said, coming to stand beside him with Sophie in her arms. We did it, Jake agreed. He took Sophie's small hand in his. You're going to see Earth, little one. Real sky. Real sun. Everything. Sophie looked up at him with wide eyes. Home? She asked. Yes, Kate said, tears streaming down her face. Home. Behind them, Ben's data packet was spreading across the galaxy. Ships that received it were transmitting it further. Within hours, thousands of species would know about the Krell station and what had happened there. Human military ships were probably already being dispatched. The Krell had thought they could study humans forever, keep them as comfortable prisoners, use them for data until they died of old age. They had been wrong. They had underestimated human patience, human ingenuity, human determination. Most of all, they had underestimated what humans would